Good morning, good evening, or good afternoon, depending on where and when you're watching this podcast. I'm Thomas Fessler, my friends, and this is Disclosure Tonight. Happy Saturday, February 14th. It's Valentine's Day. Hope you had a good one, folks, and hope you're either heading into it or heading out of it, but either way, today is for your loved ones and those you care about the most. On that note, let's go ahead and welcome in our audience and see who the heck we have out there. People I care about. Our audience, how about that? We have Amanda's out there along with Amiga Rules. Andy W's here. He is in the chat and he's in the back. Can't wait to see what Andy brings to the conversation today. We've got Bradley and Craig Smith. Dan Larev is here along with Eliza Teal. We've got Firefly and Gray Hair Discoveries is in the chat. JJ's out there along with J Cat Meow, Jericho, and King Bull 90s. How about that? I saw Kelly Broten, her piercing blue eyes earlier. I know you're out there somewhere, Kelly. Who else we've got out there? We've got Max Metal, Metal Gaming 420. Start passing it around. Stop being a Bogart, Metal. Prism Films US is here along with Sam. We got Scooby Dooby Gooby, who's got a video of a UFO. He thinks it's a saucer. Send it across, Scooby. Jump in the back. We'll cover it today. Sholto's out there along with the Ginger Effect Art. And, well, that's our audience today. On that note, let's go ahead and jump into the studio and enjoy the solar storm that's going on in Levi, Lapland, over in Finland right now. There's an amazing solar storm that's been going on there every single day this week, and today was not a day for it not to happen. That's where I got the title card. I went to go look at what was going on, and it was one of those things they call a cinnamon roll or cinnamon bun. Let me bring that up here and just show it. Where is it at? It's here somewhere. Intro silence. Here we go. Just a beautiful picture out there of beauty, my friends. Had to go ahead and just share it with everybody. Yeah, this is a view that was, not that long ago, earlier today, and it's just going on and it's cranking and it's absolutely gorgeous. It's a great website to check out if you like watching Aurora Borealis like I do. I'm going to go ahead and share it with everybody in the chat. I think I can actually share links with the chat, so let me go ahead and do this and put it out there. There we go. Save it in your bookmarks, folks. It is just absolutely gorgeous. It's nonstop, and it's just gorgeous stuff. So that's why I actually had to take that, put it in my background, and we could go ahead and start the show. Yeah. And with the stuff that's coming up with the giant coronal hole that's coming our way, maybe reaching down into the mid-latitudes in the upcoming days, tomorrow, tonight, and the next day. The solar storm is the solar wind is kicking up, which will bring the auroras down a lot lower. It's great stuff to say the absolute least. On that note, what an interesting week. A lot of things happening. Disclosure, not that much. Today, I have to admit, I got up a little bit later than usual, started going through the feed on X after story after story after story, going through all my contacts, all the different stuff. This is probably the slowest day that I've seen in Disclosure. Absolutely odd. I guess this is where it's headed, but there was an interesting story. If I can get across to this in a second, I think I can get it from here. Get out of this pose, shrink it down a little bit right now. Oh, I took down the wrong video. Let me do it in a different place, and I'll go ahead and bring this up. Yeah, interesting story coming about NASA covering up evidence of things going on in our solar system that apparently they don't want us to know about. And there's facts included. So let me see if I can find this bookmark here and get it to it really good. Hopefully everyone's had a good Valentine's Day out there so far. I would hope so. Oh, let's do this unexpected. Laura, how you doing, my dear lady?
I'm good. I'm doing a little back research on stuff that was remote viewed back in 2024, September 17th, and how it relates to something that Jake Barber said about Michael Herrera and the people that were picked up and why they were chosen. And I came up with the name of Julia Mossbridge, too, is involved with this kind of research. And basically, they were chosen in terms of they had less plastic chemicals they were exposed to. They lived off the land in natural manner. And there's something about that he said caused them to be better for the program and training. It's like his way of saying it was experience in third world countries People that live simpler life outdoors more have less contaminants in the food and their drugs, and their culture seem to be a little bit better at disassociating and heightening their intuition.
Right.
So years apart, we picked up on that.
Yeah.
So,
well, luckily, I did grow up in a community. We had our own, actually not a community. I grew up in a neighborhood. We all had our own wells. Granted, the water after a while tasted like sulfur. Absolutely horrible to smell. However, I did not get exposed until I was an adult to putting fluoride in the water.
I had early with the well as well.
Yeah.
But then teenage, I did too.
Yeah. Absolutely. So it could be one of the reasons why we're so in tune with what's going on around us, Laura.
Could be.
All right. So
I just
let's.
thought I'd bring that up. I'm just working on it right now.
Thank you very much. I appreciate that. Let's see if I can get to this one here. No, not that one. I know I've got another one here. Either way, let's get into Desktop Thomas. All right. So this is coming to us from the Sentinel briefing. This is an interesting article, to say the least. The silent edit, how scientific establishments are scrubbing anomalies from the record. When NASA quietly alters a database and prestige journals refuse to peer review, the question isn't just about scientific rigor. It's about who controls the narrative. Interesting point, as we talked about this last night. If information or facts come out, scientists or the people of the boards who look at the stuff, who own the data, are more likely to change the data rather than keep it pristine, to basically say, well, everything is within the category of the box where it belongs, versus finding these anomalies that actually show something is real out there. What are we talking about? Well, going through in the hunt for 3-Eye Atlas and the interstellar object analysis. Let's get into it. I'll go. In the world of open source intelligence, which is also known as OSINT, we look for the difference between what is said yesterday and what is claimed today. Usually, we apply this to geopolitical troop movements or corporate scrubbings. But this week, the front line of information suppression moved to the most sterile environment imaginable, the CNEOS Fireball catalog over at NASA in Jet Propulsion Laboratories. We've been tracking the ongoing saga of old Professor Avi Loeb and the Galileo project closely. For months, the resistance to new data regarding interstellar objects, specifically the anomalous 3-Eye Atlas, has been palpable. But in a recent incident detailed by Avi, signals a shift from passive skepticism to active data-level interference. This is what I'm talking about, changing the data, which NASA, we've known for the longest time. They cover stuff up. They turn off the cameras on the space station. They did it back on the space shuttle. They altered the pictures that came to us from the Apollo missions on the moon. So let's get into this. Here's a deep dive. So the glitch in the Matrix. A few days ago, Avi Loeb, in his postdoctorate document, Richard Collette, identified 2 meteors from 2002 and 2025 in NASA's CNOS database that statistically appeared to be interstellar in origin. This is a massive claim. It implies that the solar system is indeed permeable, frequently visited by objects from other star systems, some of which might not be mere rocks. This is kind of like equivalent to, if you want to call it, Dr. Beatrice Vitriol, who went out there and searched the records to find stuff that shouldn't be there and to bring it forward. Luckily, her data wasn't computerized, but it was actually data that was put on plates of glass that could never be changed once they've been exposed. They wrote a paper, they posted it, and then the system rejected it. Let me get this a little bit further to the side so we can see it. Here we go. The system, come on. I'm doing it wrong again. Okay, here we go. Okay. Sorry, and the system, they didn't issue a press release. They didn't add footnote explaining the recalculation. They simply flipped the sign on one velocity component of the 2025 meteor. Less than 24 hours after the paper went public, NASA JPL updated the CNOS database. They didn't issue a press release. No, they didn't add a footnote explaining a recalculation. They simply flipped the sign on the velocity component of the 2025 meteor. The single edit silently and effectively grounded the object mathematically, forcing it back into the solar system origin. Now, if I get into this, we're not going to be able to see this. Let me see if I can bring this down to my desktop. I'll be able to zoom in on it. This is before the paper, where we're going to be getting into some stats for this. Let me get this across. Let's zoom it up a little bit. And here's what we're talking about. Something observed on the 12th of February, 2025, where it shows all the stats going across, and more importantly, its particular trajectories and everything to that particular extent. Now, coming out of this, get out of here. As per our paper, after our paper, with a signal flip of velocity component of Vy, which makes the meteor solar system origin rather than from the Earth. So they took the velocity Y and flipped it from a positive to a negative. Gotta wonder why. Loeb caught them because, like any good investigator, he had the receipts. Using the Internet Archive, known as the Wayback Machine, he was able to show the before and after. If the data was genuinely incorrect, scientific integrity demands a public correction. A silent, retroactive edit made only after a challenging paper is published is not science. Really, audience, it's a cover-up. Before the change, it showed the data with a plus velocity of plus 15.2 kilometers per second. After the CNO's data edit, they came in with a negative 15.2 kilometers per second, taking that object and grounding it to our solar system versus where its interstellar potential origins. Gotta wonder why. Laura, it seems like it's a cover-up that NASA always tries to do. If there's evidence out there that could show there's more than Earth, they don't want the public to know about it.
Absolutely. And now they changed their designation.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, they've been lying all along and working for the government, but now it's official.
Yeah, exactly. So these are the gatekeepers, right?
Exactly.
So let's get in.
Others who are getting paid very well by even aerospace companies, if we're to listen to Danny Sheehan and what he said about a few of them.
You're talking about potentially Mick West? Possibly?
Well, actually, a gentleman with the initials JS who will be coming out with a book very soon, hopefully in February.
Oh,
Mr. J.
Jason Sands?
Jay Stratton.
Jay Stratton. Yeah, you took the words off the top of my mind. It couldn't get out.
And Travis.
Jay Stratton. So they're thinking that Jay Stratton's new book is going to be filled with misinformation.
Well, not necessarily, but what Danny, now this is not coming from me, Danny was saying aerospace industries are engaged in bribery, paying these, well, let's just call it payment for keeping secrets, hundreds of thousands of dollars a year. He claimed they've hired guys like Jay Stratton and like Travis.
That's why they had set up their different firms that are dealing with propulsion methods, whatever. First one they set up down in Alabama. They shut that down. They didn't shut it down. They then moved it to Virginia, didn't they?
Yes. And we did look at Jay a long time ago. Sorry, Jay, we kind of wanted to know. And a couple of years back, and it was like, he could go either way. Can't really trust him. And I got international... working for some international people, which was quite interesting.
Yeah, very much so. Yeah, it's just crazy, But then again, there were a bunch of posts on Reddit that came out at one time from Jay Stratton's wife that were really negative and almost derogatory against Lou.
Yeah, infighting. That makes it even more interesting for us to wonder what's really going on. But I'm still going to buy his book because inquiring minds want to know.
Oh, gosh, absolutely. I'll have to put it next to my book of Eminent in Lou's next book when it comes out. Let's get into it. While NASA scrubbed the data, the academic publishing world closed its ranks. Avi Loeb reports that an associate editor at a prestigious astrophysics journal, why is it always the associates, the people who are the staffers behind it that shut it down, refused to even send this new paper to peer review? The reason given? Quote, I believe your work would be rather limited interest to the astrophysics research community as a whole. This wasn't one-off. The same editor used this exact template to reject two previous papers on 3I Atlas. One, a paper on 3I Atlas's anti-tau physics, later published in monthly notices of the Royal Astronomical Society to rave reviews. Now, this one, is this the first time we've seen an anti-tau on a comet, right? As far as I can remember? Because usually when a comet comes in towards the sun, the comet itself, R2D2 is the comet, the tail is going away from my big head, which is the sun. But this one, we actually had a comet tail that was going towards the sun, not away, which is something relatively new. Now, this definition of a paper on the object's anomalous rotation and wobble, which was, again, a new observation. This is the definition of a choke point, when a single individual can unilaterally decide the analysis of a potential interstellar probe is off limit or interest. They are not acting as an editor. They are acting as a filter for accepted reality, meaning we are rejecting the truth of what's happening out there. Why does this matter? I know it's Avi Loeb, but this does matter, my friends. For those of us tracking 3A Atlas, this pattern is alarmingly familiar. Same stuff we see in UFOs on a regular base time, like we've seen before on this space station, on this space shuttle and everything. We are seeing a vitrification in the scientific community. This is the same kind of actions that we saw that kept the UAP disclosure agreement out of the NDAA. It wasn't the senators who kicked it out. It was the staffers who pushed the senators not to support it. Now, the data hunters, those using sensors, satellites, and OS intelligence methods to analyze what is actually happening in our skies, like Avi Loeb, the Galileo Project, and independent analysis against the curators who believe their role is to protect the stability of established narratives by filtering out data that doesn't fit the standard model. This is the same thing where we start treating science like it's a religion. You cannot challenge the word of God. You cannot challenge the accepted methods of what we have out there. And if you do, it's heresy, and we're going to shut that down. The unborn babies of scientific discovery, as Loeb puts it, are being culled before they can even reach the peer review incubator. At the Sentinel, we believe the truth is found in anomalies, the data points that don't fit. When a government agency silently alters a database to make an anomaly disappear, they aren't just cleaning up a spreadsheet. They are trying to close the door that has already been blown off its hinges. Wow. Now Sentinel is watching for more edits. They're archiving the data. The data is out there along in the Internet Wayback Machine, but it's interesting to say the least. This kind of stuff is going on. Any thoughts from our friends in the back? Laura, this is an interesting topic to say the least.
It is, and that's why I try to capture things, and I have many books that get it in print just in case things disappear, and keep dates, because it's an evolving situation, and I like to have the evidence.
You know, back in 2005, when I was working with Barry Friedman, I'll bring up his name frequently, the guy I love, rest his soul, he died because his addicted son stole all of his heart meds. And he met an untimely death, unfortunately. But anyway, Barry was one of the ones back in 2005 when I was starting to work with him. He said, you see anything on the internet, create a PDF. PDF it, save it to your hard drive, because the internet changes on a regular basis. And if you have the data, you'll always have the original record, which is the same thing, Laura.
Correct.
Yeah, absolutely. On that note, let me go ahead and get back into our next piece we're going to be getting up to. Let me see if I can just flip this up. We've got a video here of Colonel KARL Nell from his appearance over at the Seoul conference. It's something we've never played here on Disclosure tonight. It's coming to us from Seoul itself. So let's go ahead and get this one up and play it, and we'll pause and go through it as time is going on. So let's jump into this piece, everybody. Here we go. Oops, I gotta get rid of that.
The 2025 Seoul Foundation Symposium.
We are playing this with permission from Soul. We appreciate their support of Disclosure tonight and being able to show their content on our show.
It's obviously humbling and gratifying to be back to talk at the third Soul Symposium. Soul's really moved the bar on this topic, as you can see from the first presentation, as well as what's going to come later today. I thought it would be interesting, since we're all here in Italy, to maybe just do a comparison between the modern era of sort of UFO, UAP investigation and the period that's called the five good Roman emperors, from the death of Domitian to the rise of Commodus, which Gibbon kind of talked about as, in some sense, maybe somewhat facetiously, as the sort of the best period in all of human history, at least from the perspective of 1788. So I thought we'd talk a little bit about that and relate that actually back to some of the things that were happening in Congress as well. So we'll kind of follow this outline, if we can go to that. So I'll talk a little bit about the nature of knowledge, get into lines of evidence and how we can know or not know what truth is, this comparison that I talked about, and then this idea of the congressional briefing book that was put together, that was some of the things that were going on behind the scenes that might be interesting. So we'll talk about the nature of knowledge first. So epistemology, obviously, is the philosophy that examines the nature, origin, and limits of knowledge. If we go back to Plato and 400 BC, he talks about knowledge being justified true belief, and then you get into this idea of, well, how do you sort of justify belief? And so there's this thing called the Munchausen trilemma that the German philosopher Hans Albrecht kind of proposed back in 1968, that highlights sort of the threefold problem of justified true belief, called after Munchausen. And you can see in the photo there this sort of fictional kind of comedic figure that's trying to pull himself out of the muck with his horse by the roots of his hair. Like, in other words, this sort of circular problem of knowledge. And so we've got sort of the idea of knowledge based on foundational facts, which I would relate to sort of the UAP first principles evidence. Beatrice talked a little bit about this, but basically life evolved here pretty quickly. There's maybe 20 billion sun-like stars in the galaxy. Amino acids are present in interstellar material. Every planet, every sun star we've looked at has planets. We've got life that can live in geothermal vents and in oil under the crust. We've got microbes that can live in space. This idea that faster than light travel probably is possible, since Alcubierre sort of solved Einstein's equations for at least a theoretical way of doing that. Dark energy exists that could equate to negative energy, which is sort of the means that might be applied to do that. So sort of a lot of first principles evidence that would suggest that there's really a higher bar to argue that life isn't common, and a higher bar to argue maybe that life and intelligent life don't exist. So you've got this sort of foundational facts sort of argument. And you've got then this idea of beliefs justified by other beliefs. So you've got whistleblowers that have come forward, and you've got this testimonial evidence. We've had 3 hearings. You've had the Leslie Kean 2017 article, the New York Times. So like a lot of people coming out and basically saying this, including presidents, including senators, etc. And then, of course, you've got what would essentially be sort of self-supported evidence. And again, obviously, Beatrice talked about this, probably the most compelling of the self-supported evidence, the sensor data, the transients. But also, you've got documentary evidence. And I've kind of talked about some of these in previous talks. And maybe we'll talk a little bit more about the documentary part in this particular talk. But the trouble is, with each of these lines of evidence, let's see if we're going to get this to work. Okay, here we go. Is this sort of problem of justifying true belief, right? So foundational facts can be argued as being essentially dogmatic or essentially assuming the premise in the argument. And, so the way around that is sort of foundationalism that suggests that if I base my argument on foundational principles, then I should assume that's valid. But the counter argument is it's like essentially circular. You're creating a sort of a dogmatism. Your axioms sort of imply the conclusion. And so that's the problem. Justified by other beliefs, you create this sort of regression. Well, if your assertion's based on somebody else's assertion, then you can question that assertion, and ultimately you've got to trace that back. And so the argument is, well, if that chain of reasoning is sort of infinite, then we're good. But obviously there's not an infinite chain of people that are going to kind of assert that, right? So infinitism is sort of countered by this regressive problem. And then self-supported, the idea is if I get a coherent set of facts, like all these things interconnect, then I should have sort of more confidence in that than just like sort of a linear chain. But again, you can take that back and says into being somewhat circular. So this is the problem of justified true belief. And so relating this now back to the the 5 Roman emperors, Marcus Aurelius basically said everything we hear is opinion, not fact. Everything we see is perspective, not truth. And that's something I think we've got to kind of take into account as we're trying to convince the folks that are sort of naysayers. And so what standards of evidence are reasonable to sort of justify belief and move belief from a status of uncertainty into a status of knowledge. And so that kind of gets to this next slide, which is the standards of evidence. And Gary's talked about this. I think he talked about this at the first Soul Conference. And it's been I think, a perennial theme of the Soul Foundation to try to figure out, like, what standards of evidence are appropriate? How do we define that? And then how can we measure our progress against those standards? And so using some sort of legal terms here, there's maybe some...
Oops. Why did this screw up?
It has slipped out of the foundation.
There's a little error. Corruption broke.
And I would use that term because you've got whistleblower testimony, you've got sensor data, you've got documents, you've got, science is a big piece of this, but you've got like a larger context as well. So reasonable suspicion, the standard sort of used in the United States for a law enforcement officer to sort of stop and question somebody. You got to have some suspicion to do that. Probable cause in the United States, you can arrest somebody for that, right? Preponderance of the evidence, you've got like 51%, or greater than 50% leans one way or another, then I can like ascribe to that, right? And I don't think necessarily science would sort of kind of follow along with that, right? And then you've got clear and convincing, which is basically like, let's weight the evidence, right? Like some evidence is really more compelling by its nature, so it's not just a summation of, greater than 50%, but, what is more compelling. And then finally, the ultimate standard, at least in the United States, is to convict somebody. Sufficient evidence to send somebody to prison for life, or perhaps even give them the death penalty, which would be beyond reasonable doubt. Right, and so this is where the conversation usually ends and say, okay, well, if I can meet one or more of these standards, then, there's sort of reason to accept this, certainly in a legal sense. But like the definition here almost sort of implies the converse, right? So if there's reasonable doubt, then there must be a thing that's like an unreasonable doubt. Right, and I think that's kind of the problem with this particular topic. There's an unreasonable person standard that I would argue, and evidence suggests, has sort of been helped along, let's say created by the stigma that's applied to this topic, and also essentially an...
Quick comment from someone coming in the chat. They said about KARL Nell being able to give us... Let me turn this off here. Let me get this up so I can show this for the audience. I just want to go ahead and cover this really quick. I wish KARL Nell would give us an example how he's 100% certain the NHI is here, instead of hear him say like he did last time, that he got asked and he was so sure he just said, well, others are saying it. Well, apparently it's been reported in the past here on Disclosure Tonight that Colonel KARL Nell, during his leadership at AFRICOM, which is our Africa, if you want to call it, defense locations that there was a UAP, downed UAP retrieval that happened in Sudan. So the thing is, no one's ever asked him that question. Be interesting to see where he comes up on it. Laura, your hand is up. Go ahead.
Yeah, I'd also add that just recently on a podcast called Astral Recall Podcast, Chris Bledsoe was being interviewed, and he talked about KARL Nell. He talked about the term catastrophic disclosure. Bledsoe was sitting in a cafe at the Congressional Grill, Washington, D.C., with him, as well as a whole group of other people, senator, congressmen from MIT and other people. There were 12 of us having dinner, and they were asking questions. And he was talking about back in a time when Iran was firing missiles at Israel. It was just before Trump took office in November. And he said that there were drones that came up, or he said that's what they said, there were drones, but they lied. He said there were, to confuse people, they put up our own drones. And he was saying that he was told that this was going to happen more and more as we try and fight and throw missiles at each other for some reason. I guess they don't want us to, or whatever group. And then KARL responded, that would be catastrophic disclosure. And so Bledsoe said, well, you need to tell people then. So he seems to think that the beings are forcing the disclosure on us.
Okay, I've had this inkling feeling for the longest time. It's one of those things you just know. Perhaps in the past, the non-human intelligence made a deal, if you want to call it, with our federal government. They would slow things down potentially and we'd give you some tech, slow things down with regards to how often they're being seen. We give you some technology, but by a specific date that you must go ahead and disclose to the public of of why we're here, what's coming our way. Otherwise, shit's going to hit the fan. We have to work as one. And I would, without any doubt in my mind, would actually have to say that the way our government works and other world government works is deadlines come, deadlines go, and them thinking in Washington, what are they going to do to keep us from not giving the truth? They're not going to do anything. But things have been picking up for the longest time. Things have been accelerating. While the, if you want to call it the AFOSI, has been pushing back along with the DOD to shove the frickin' UFO situation back in the bottle like they have, we're heading into something that's in our near-term future that is going to be catastrophic, not because the non-human intelligence wanted it that way, because the schmucks in our government have been doing everything to keep the truth out from getting to the public because they're worried about the money they've got, religion, they're worried about their governments, not necessarily worrying about humanity as a whole.
And our ability to see and detect them is increasing. Case in point, the recent conference that they had, I believe you saw. Yeah. It was called 2026 UAP Detection and Tracking Summit, which I need to finish watching, but there you have it.
Yeah, absolutely. So let's get back to this. Appreciate you chiming in. That's what I like about watching videos. Sometimes we used to chime in a lot of times. People would say, just let us watch the video. But when we're hearing things and seeing it, we've got to stop. We've got to talk about it, because otherwise I'm super ADD, my friends. I will completely forget about what I just heard if I didn't jump in. On that note, I'm controlling it as best as I can. Let's get back to this video and see where we go. Let me turn the chat back on again. And people keep on asking about Mike. He's on hiatus, which means he's not gone. He's on hiatus for the meantime. We're working on how to kind of, figure out where and when to bring him back, because he's been a pivotal part of the show for the longest time, and he's probably one of the reasons why we still have Disclosure tonight as well. While some things happened that were greatly unfortunate, yes, he's still grounded, but like any good parent, eventually grounding has to go away. So let's go ahead and get back to this if we can. Here we go.
Organized disinfo campaign that's documented, in the Condon Committee report and the Robinson panel and some of the stuff we'll get into here. So in some sense, what we maybe need to do is convince people to unlearn what they think they know and get to a state of atraxia that like the classical Greeks would sort of said, or Peronius would say, is essentially a state of withholding judgment before all the evidence is in. And if we can kind of just get the vast majority of people into this atraxia state, or reverse this unreasonable person standard, then we can maybe have a mature conversation about the topic. And in some sense, I think that's what Soul's trying to do here, as well as many other folks. So just to kind of tie this back into the theme, Epictetus, famous Stoic philosopher, lived during the time of the 5 great Roman emperors, basically said it's impossible for a person to learn what he thinks he already knows. And so that's the problem with this topic. Everybody thinks they already know the answer, and they don't even consider the data. The problem that Beatrice talked about of submitting her papers and getting like an automatic rejection in 5 minutes before they could even read it. That's the standard that we have to sort of overcome to get into this place where we can have a serious conversation. And obviously, she's achieved that, and I think Soul is moving the ball forward to achieve that. So that's maybe the context for the 5 Roman emperors: Nerva, Trajan, Hadrian, Antonius Pius, Marcus Aurelius. As I said, kind of that interesting period. So maybe we don't take this too seriously, but I think the comparison might be somewhat interesting. So on the left, we've got what my take is on the sort of canonical description of this period in time, and on the right, let's compare it to the modern era, right? So from AD 96 to AD 180. That's the period of the 5 great Roman emperors, 84 years, right? So the period from 1941, the beginning of World War II, to now, 84 years. So like they're comparable in time. So the period of the 5 Roman emperors, basically the political rules established by Augustus and sanctioned by his successors was basically followed. In other words, they had sort of a standard way of operating that, successive emperors sort of correspond.
Honestly, just want to throw this in here. I guess we like following the Roman ways. I would honestly rather follow the Hindu ways. Just saying. There's a lot more knowledge there. Let's just say that.
Too. In the case of, let's say, the modern UFO era, oversight has slipped out of elected official control. In other words, like the standard procedures of our government institutions, at least in the U.S., maybe haven't pertained with this topic because, authority has sort of slipped out of our normal process. So going back on the left there, the elite, as embodied by the Senate, was treated with respect. These emperors held deference to the Senate. And so obviously Congress, as we can imagine from what's been stated by Rounds and Schumer and Rubio, the people that signed up to the Disclosure Act, as well as the 3 hearings in the House, Congress recognizes that they've not been informed. So the 5 Roman emperors waged war, sure, but they were considered justified and successful. I think we can argue, and it's been stated, and Leslie Keene even captured this in one of her pieces, that there is a sub-rosa arms race going on to reverse engineer these technologies. David Grush has talked about that, as well as other folks, and so that's apparently the case. So there's not levying of onerous tax. There was certainly taxation during that period, but not onerous taxation. On the other hand, trillions of dollars of taxpayer funds in the U.S. have sort of been lost track of, right? This idea of the black budget. And then finally, they did good by the citizens of Rome, beautifying the city of Rome in particular. And we've actually probably made some progress, but an unknown amount of progress. And they kept the plebes from starving, which is sort of the standard kind of common denominator, and we've prevented ontological shock. So I think what we're seeing here is basically they failed on every account except maybe the last, and even the last is somewhat condescending. So anyway, that's part of the comparison, but the timelines might be interesting too, right? So Nerva really followed a period of grave miscarriage of justice and implemented a lot of reforms that were considered ethical and appropriate. Trajan had the largest military campaigns during the period. Hadrian dialed that in with military reforms. Antonius Pius had a period of peace and stability that Marcus Aurelius inherited. And these periods can kind of map to that lower timeline. So the lower timeline is what I'm suggesting how one might divide the modern UFO period. So and some of this is kind of derived from Dolan, but not necessarily strictly adherent to Dolan. So, the period from the beginning of World War I, 1941, from the U.S. perspective, through the wave that sort of Beatrice talked about, the UFO.
I just want to bring up really quick here. Interesting to see how KARL Nell goes, Laura, and brings up Richard Dolan in passing, saying, quoting Dolan for what he's been bringing up. This really shows where Richard Dolan is.
Well, I'm a big fan. I've been a member of his group for years now. So he speaks the truth. He's probably one of the best out there.
Absolutely. I just had to point that out for the audience. Here we go.
Flap in 52 that precipitated Project Blue Book. That's the managing the problem era where the U.S. government was trying to get a handle on this. The crisis and containment, that's the 52 to 69 period. That's your Blue Book period, essentially. The global strangeness period followed that with incursions in the northern tier, and I would argue sort of kind of continued through Whitney Strieber's publication of Communion. Like I've kind of put that as like a watershed moment. And then you get into this sort of what I call into Dreamland and beyond. Some of these are Dolan's terminology, through just prior to the Leslie Kean article and the videos, and then we're in this modern period, the final piece, what I call the Great Expectations. So if we're going to kind of compare these two periods just for kind of fun here. So Nerva set the precedent for establishing just rule that followed through to all five just emperors. And so let's bounce back and forth from the upper to the lower, right? So this period 41 to 51 set the precedent essentially for establishing how the U.S. would confront the UFO problem post-World War II, particularly Truman. If we jump back to the top, Nerva initiated beneficent agrarian welfare and legal programs, and obviously this is the period that initiated this UFO management structure that happened in the U.S. Nerva created a mechanism to expand citizenship to people in the provinces, and during this management period, access to this data, and this is quoted out of some of the documents that we'll show here, was the most highly classified subject in the U.S. government. In other words, like preventing really enfranchisement. And going back to Nerva, he ensured stability and peaceful transition of power through this idea of adoptive succession. All five Roman emperors, interestingly, adopted their successors. They didn't have natural-born children. And so that sounds a lot like nepotism, but what it ended up actually being was meritocracy, because they selected people that were actually competent, as demonstrated historically. And so contrasting that, stability and effective transition of control was implemented through a non-disclosure process, which I would argue is essentially a nepotism process. If you're in the club, you stay in the club. So we'll walk through this, and there's some interesting parallels that we don't necessarily need to take too seriously, but I think it's sort of instructive to highlight maybe some of the things that are going right, some of the things that kind of went wrong. So going back to Trajan, very aggressive military expansion of the empire to its greatest possible extent. So you could argue, conversely, 52 to 69, this was the Blue Book era, very aggressive government debunking of UFO reports, even more than the previous era. The previous era, and we'll see some documents to this effect, that was much more open about the reality of the topic. Trajan championed philanthropic endeavors, subsidizing, the poor and orphans, as anybody that has sort of studied these periods knows, and contrast that with the accountability of this sort of legacy program that slipped out of this control that I talked about, more than likely during the Eisenhower administration. Trajan granted quite a deal of the treasury to public works and infrastructure projects. And as I said before, the the idea of public-facing disclosure was very much discredited with Blue Book, but also less well-known is there was maybe the first attempt,
Okay, discredited with Blue Book, but Arrow is doing the same thing. As Eric Roth and Guru says, Arrow is the new Blue Book on steroids, 100%.
Non-disclosure attempt to engage through Walt Disney in 55, 56, which was very abortive. So what we're trying to say...
What he's talking about here is at a period in time, the government was in talks with Disney about bringing out a movie to go ahead and talk about disclosure and the UAP situation and everything. Laura, you're familiar with that one, aren't you?
Yes, I am. And it made me think of the new movies that are going to be coming out soon. In addition to, actually, Tom DeLonge is going to have a television series based on his first Secret Machines book.
Really?
Which is another, yeah. So that's in the future.
Yeah. And he also looked back during the Carter administration, back in the 70s when he was there. He actually wanted to have a display that was going to be on a train that was going to go across the United States that was going to display replicas of crash materials we got from Roswell, along with, if you want to call it, alien bodies and et cetera. So there have been presidents and different points in the past. They've wanted to bring it forward, but for some reason, it always gets shut down by the elite.
Mm-hmm. Well, that's changing.
Oh, yeah. Here we go.
Here is that there's this sort of non-disclosure initiative is not new, and Jacques will undoubtedly, I imagine, reference some of this. This has sort of been cyclic. This most recent post-2017 period is noteworthy for the progress that's been made, but by no means is it unique, and this is actually every couple of decades to sort of kind of come up again. And then each of these sort of emperors and each of these sort of phases is sort of the same. Adoptive succession on the one hand, which is essentially meritocracy, and non-disclosure, which is essentially nepotism happening. So Antonius Pius, just to kind of continue the analogy, increased the relevance and attention to the provinces, whereas this sort of global strangeness period started to at least impact the U.S. in a very global nature. There was military reforms during this period of the great Roman emperors. This is the Reagan era, right? Goldwater Nichols, space defense, Star Wars. So, somewhat sort of...
and all the times that Reagan came forward and talked about how a threat from in the stars could go ahead and unite humanity in ways we never imagined. And that could be honestly the reason why the information is not being brought forward, because it would change our world governments in ways, not that humanity would want it, but change our government, our governments around the world in ways that the governments wouldn't like it. Let's continue.
Antonius Pius patronized the arts to a very extensive degree. This was the second abortive attempt. That a lot of people are familiar with the Robert Emmenegger, James Sandler film, where they were going to get the Holloman Air Force Base footage, and they ultimately, the government was sort of like seeding that to create this sort of soft disclosure campaign. UFOs Past, Present, and Future was a documentary that Emmenegger directed, and it featured Rod Serling, and people can go see this documentary, but that footage that the government promised was sort of withheld, so it became sort of a inflated expectation. But it was another instance of this sort of cycle happening. And then, like Antonius Pius, this period was marked by a lack of internal revolt or foreign conflict, where conversely, this into dreamland period was marked by provocative and almost typically false disclosures, a lot of conflict with how to assess the abduction reports in this sort of UAP, UFO community, the Jamie Shandera and Bill Moore sowing of disinformation, coming relevant, that the UAP community has been penetrated to some extent by IC elements. So like, in other words, very different. Like Antonius Pius was very stable, and that period was very disruptive. And then Marcus Aurelius, so sort of the Stoic emperor, based a lot of his philosophy on the principle of Stoicism. He successfully navigated numerous crises. He had plagues, he had wars, he had famine. So the period that we're in now, this what I call this sort of great expectation period, is somewhat analogous, right? We've got wars, we've got climate, we've got AI, we've got UAP. It's not clear necessarily if we're going to be as successful navigating that, but maybe the takeaway there is, that we ought to sort of exercise more of a Stoic philosophy in terms of how we go about kind of navigating this. So anyway, I thought it'd be kind of interesting to kind of lay out that and see this sequence. So,
all right. So it's the first time we've actually seen this up close. Let's go ahead and get a closer look on what he's actually talking about, because this has been hard to see. So I guess we're getting into it. Let's get into this a bit more. 1990, we're talking about increased relevance of and attention to the global nature of phenomena on U.S. equities. Implemented military reforms, the Goldwater Act of 1986, and strengthened emphasis on space. On space defense. Abortive official U.S. government support for Emmenegger's slander UFO documentary in 1974 and ensured stability. Let me turn off the chat so people can see this. All right. Ensure stability of the effective transition of control via non-disclosure, i.e. nepotism. Then we're looking at a period marked by provocative, often false UFO disclosures and internal conflict concerning newly publicized abduction accounts from 1987, coming from Whitley Strieber. Lost accountability for trillions of U.S. dollars in the defense budget. We've talked about this many times. This is what's currently going on, folks. Money is being spent, but we have no idea where it's absolutely going. Disenfranchised civilian UFO research groups through monitoring and sowing of disinformation, coming from Moore in 1989. And then, more importantly, at the bottom, we've got ensured stability and effective transition of control via non-disclosure. And the last piece we got off to the side, let me see if I can zoom out a little bit. The ability to, where we're saying in 2017 to present, ability to successfully navigate numerous potentially destabilizing crisis remains to be seen. Wars, economy, climate, AI, UAP, etc. B is emphasis on policy and legislative matters with respect to UAP disclosure, which is the NDAAs of 22, 23, 24, and 25, folks, because they're trying to bring back that failed act for a fourth time. And possibly end to non-disclosure policy? Well, not everything. I don't think they're willing to give us all the truth. What do you think, Laura? These are a lot of things here.
I think they're so distracted right now with other things. They have their hands full, so I wouldn't be hopeful at this point. Yeah,
I agree with you completely. There's so many things going on. Turmoil in the United States, turmoil in Europe, turmoil going on in Canada, over in Iran, where there's over 200,000 people out there today in Munich, Germany, going ahead and protesting about what's been going on in Iran. Not in the United States. With the Free Palestine movement, not a word, but in Toronto, there were hundreds of thousands of people as well coming together with many people from the United States out there in protest. So it just shows you, the government, or more importantly, the people are the sheeple who close their eyes many times to the things that are going on around the world. Let's get back to this video. Here we go.
I'm going to talk briefly about UAP in Italy, since we're here, and I'm going to jump into this briefing book that will tie back to...
Dang it. All right. Let me get this back just a little bit here, because we saw it for a second. Otherwise, we're going to be seeing blur for the rest of this. What is he talking about next? UFOs recorded in ancient Roman times. Such reputable historians, widely regarded as accurate due to rigorous procedures from Roman authorities. 1 and 218 BC, we had spectacleless ships gleaming in the sky. 217 BC, and RP round shields were seen in the sky. 212 BC, at Riate, a huge stone was seen flying about. In 713 BC. At Latvium, a spectacle of a great fleet was seen to have been seen in the sky. In 154 BC, a Kamsa weapons, Arma, appeared flying in the sky, the Armada. In 104 BC, the people of Ameria and Tudor observed weapons in the sky rushing together from east and west. Those from the west appeared being routed. In 100 BC, probably at Rome, a round shield, emitting sparks ran across the sky from east to west at sunset. Sounds more like a meteor than anything. At 43 BC, a spectacle of defense and offensive weapons was seen rise from the earth to the sky with a clashing noise. So it's out there. There's many more things that go back, the Mahabharata and other ancient accountings across the world. These are just some things that are being coined as to ancient Roman times. But if you look back in the historical record, the non-human intelligence has probably been around as long as humanity has been here. Let's continue.
Since we're here, and I'm going to jump into this briefing book that will tie back to that timeline that I just gave. So this phenomenon obviously isn't a recent phenomenon. Livy talked about it, Pliny the Elder talked about it, Plutarch talked about it. The Romans had this idea of a prodigy, which was something that was so important that it had to be recorded for posterity, and it would influence their understanding of their current affairs. It was sort of being like a prediction in some sense. And so Livy documented a lot of this. Some of this came down to Pliny in his natural history, and ultimately to Plutarch. Plutarch obviously writing during the period of the 5 great Roman emperors. But you could see the timeline there. 2016 BC, a spectacle of ships gleamed in the sky. In 2017, round shields were seen in the sky. 2012 BC, a huge stone was seen flying about. Do these sound sort of like transients, perhaps? In 173 BC, a spectacle of great fleet was said to have been seen in the sky. In 154, at Compassia, weapons like arrowheads, spears, swords appeared flying in the sky, and so on and so on. Back all the way up to 43 BC, a spectacle of defensive and offensive weapons was seen to rise from the earth to fly in the sky with clashing noise. So, and Jacques has talked about this, obviously, in Wonders in the Sky, and Beatrice has sort of talked about this. So this phenomenon goes back to ancient times that predate the sort of the period of time I was talking about, but came down to that period in Pliny the Elder's natural history, in the recording of the prodigies. And it's important to note that, the Romans took great pains to validate this, sort of this idea of justified true belief. Like, these things weren't sort of haphazardly recorded. There was a significant administrative process and a vetting process that the Romans used to assert that a prodigy was actually a prodigy, or an event equated to a prodigy. So it gets back to this idea of standards of evidence almost in a legal sense, which we've sort of dispensed with, as I alluded earlier. This is an interesting event too, the 1933 Magenta event that people have talked about. This is obviously, as we're going into World War II, several classified telegrams talk about this crash in 1933, not far from where we are here today. So there's documentary evidence that's been out there for quite a while that suggests this phenomenon is real, and it ties back even to substantiating some of the things that David Grush has said, even in an international sense. And we've got 3 of the 4 telegrams that were sent contemporaneous with this event that basically said, that Mussolini was clamping down on the information associated with this very anomalous phenomenon, and it's really starting what you might call the sort of the non-disclosure kind of paradigm. So let's talk about this congressional briefing book and tie these 2 pieces together. So, as this legislation that everybody's familiar with, the Disclosure Amendment and the other amendments that have happened, have moved through the system, there was a briefing book of documentation that was put together to brief congressional members. So not just like whistleblower testimony, but official, declassified, and FOIA-released government documents over many years that, once assembled sort of in a coherent way, makes a very strong case, even in the U.S. government's own words, words that the topic is real. And so this sort of package was put together to kind of jumpstart the process of informing senators, informing Congress people that the topic ought to be taken seriously as these whistleblowers were coming in. So there was essentially 21 documents, 3 videos, and now 2 whistleblower transcripts at the time, now 3 whistleblower transcripts that were kind of put together for this. And we had a prominent researcher like create XSums, like executive summaries. So some of these documents are quite lengthy. And so this whole thing was packaged up to incentivize ultimately the passage of the Disclosure Amendment, which is to really recreate the control group that had slipped out of elected official control back in the Eisenhower administration, and maybe bring this back under proper accountability, hearkening back again to what we were saying under the period that NERVA started, where we're kind of conforming to the rule of law now. And so this right to know hashtag and UAPDA.org are a series of organizations, including Soul Foundation, but and Ocean X, who is here, and UAP Sweden, NPI, UAP Disclosure Fund, Galileo Project. 14 organizations have banded together with varying political beliefs, varying emphasis areas, probably varying sort of focus of sort of their understanding of the topic from a scientific or New Age or even like legal and aerospace perspective, saying like we need this amendment to sort of restore that oversight. So this congressional briefing book was a component in getting us to this stage. And in fact, this petition, I'd invite people to go take a look at that. That petition is still in force and hopefully will be a mechanism to document the public will in continuing this cycle of disclosure. Now, so let's tie now this briefing book of essentially 24 items into this sort of timeline. So we've got memos and declassified documents that pertain to each of these phases: the managing the problem phase, the crisis containment, like the blue book phase, the global strangeness, where this expansion is happening, understanding this is not just a U.S. phenomenon, it's more of a global phenomenon, this sort of dreamland stage, and then this great expectation stage. And so maybe I'll walk through some of these documents and maybe highlight what has basically already been established as far as official opinion on the topic. So the first period, right, and we relate this to the NERVA period. So NERVA quote, "I've done nothing which should prevent me from laying down my power and living in safety as a private man." So he's essentially saying, nobody's going to assassinate me for doing wrong. So let's maybe keep that in mind as we look at some of the documents here that explain kind of where the U.S. government's thinking was in this early period. So the first memo from 47, and a lot of people are going to be familiar with these memos. So I'm maybe not saying stuff that anybody is not familiar with, but once you aggregate all this, it's somewhat interesting. So Milton Ladd is the number 3 guy at the FBI. He's writing, he's getting a memo from, an internal memo from one of their agents, and it's an extensive discussion of the flying disc problem. The Army Air Corps has been actively investigating these sightings, and they list through possible explanations: celestial phenomena, foreign technology, hoaxes, and this guy, the Brigadier General Shugan, the head of the Requirements Division for Army Air Corps, is requesting FBI assistance in interviewing witnesses. So essentially, the Army's basically saying this is becoming a domestic problem, not just a military problem, and we need the FBI with their investigative authorities to sort of help us get after this. So it's like an admission that not only it's real, but it's sort of beyond the scope of what the military can actually handle themselves.
Well. Something a little bird told me, my higher conscious told me, go ahead and check what's going on over on X. Yes, we have a breaking UFOs alert. Yeah, there's a new video that just came out of Obama saying that, yes, aliens are real. Let's go ahead and bring this up. This is from a recent interview that just took place. Let's go ahead and play this little clip for audience and see where it takes us. Here we go.
Are aliens real?
They're real, but I haven't seen them, and they're not being kept in, what is it?
Area 51?
Area 51. There's no underground facility, unless there's this enormous conspiracy and they hid it from the President of the United States.
What was the first question you wanted answered when you became president?
Where are the aliens?
Where are the aliens?
There we go. Holy cow. Didn't expect this to go ahead and hit during the show. Andy, your thoughts on this one? Interesting to see that our president is coming out. Our former president. Oh, you couldn't hear it. Dang it. All right. Because I'm in the wrong browser. Let me get to Brave. Let me get a new window up here. Let me bring it across. Sorry for the people in the back. Let me play it again for the audience. Well, yeah, screwed up on that one. Let's zoom up a little bit more. Coming from this post. All right. Bang it up one more time so you can hear in the back, Andy. All right, here we go. One more time. This is breaking news.
Are aliens real?
They're real, but I haven't seen them, and they're not being kept in, what is it?
Area 51?
Area 51. There's no underground facility unless there's this enormous conspiracy, and they hid it from the President of the United States.
What was the first question you wanted answered when you became president?
Where are the aliens?
Where are the aliens?
So there we go. First of all, saying aliens are real. They're not at Area 51. No, I haven't seen one. But if there's going to be conspiracy about the president announcing it, he is saying it first. Does this take the whole situation, Andy, with regards to the president of the United States coming out and saying aliens are real and Obama is beating Trump to it?
I think it could well be. And, we're all, adult enough to realize that, probably the first question that any president, or any prospective person going in to become your president asks is, are aliens real? And
right, but this is the first time we've had a person who was president saying that was his first question.
Yeah, he's the first one to be open and honest, we hope.
Yeah.
Open on it and honest with us about this, but I think he, with what he says, they're not going to be in Area 51. He's 100% correct on that. It's too well known a site now, any of these objects are in the most, obscure places. Probably could be in a storage building near where any one of us lives, So.
Yeah. Well, it's easy to know that there is some friction between Obama and Trump. And for me, it just seems like he's going ahead and trying to, pull the rabbit out of the hat before someone else in D.C. has the opportunity to. I guess, yes, KARL means nothing without proof. However, it's just interesting you have him jumping into this, and he would say about it before, but I can't talk about it. But now he's saying that they're real. Well, no, it's not AI.
Which one of your presidents, when he was asked, said, "Oh, ask Barry." So,
go ask Barack. Joe Biden said that.
Ask Barack. Yeah. So, whether they all know he's going to be possibly the most forthcoming, being that he is no longer, he's just a normal citizen for want of other better words. But the fact that he comes across and says that, they're real, it's like, and
Daryl, from a position of someone who's interested in the topic, not as maybe as deeply vested as we are, what do you think about what Obama's saying?
I mean, is he really admitting anything? I'm just trying to figure that out.
Well, let's play it again.
He said,
are aliens real?
Let's play it again.
They're real, but I haven't seen them, and they're not being kept in, what is it?
Area 51?
Area 51.
Which means he hasn't seen them, but he knows where they're being kept. And he knows it's not an Area 51.
He also says that it's the greatest conspiracy because they've hid it from a president. So he's not saying there is a conspiracy. He said it would be the biggest conspiracy.
Yeah. Yeah. Interesting to say the absolute least.
I want to hear more about it.
Yeah, we all want to hear more about it, my friend. The Quality Leering Center. But then again, you do have that new facility that they built in the south side of Chicago that looks more like a building from the Empire to have the Emperor's freaking spacecraft come and dock than it looks like an actual museum. Just saying. You never know.
Yeah.
All right, we'll get back to the video here. I just had to interrupt on that one. It's interesting to say the least. Here we go.
Domestic problem also. And so very tellingly, Hoover says, like, I'll go along with this, and that's J. Edgar Hoover. I'll go along with this as long as I get access to discs recovered. So they're already talking about like a recovery in July of 1947. And now we can think back to the Magenta case in 1933, where there's a purported crash right before, or as World War II was kicking off, and obviously the liberation of Italy by U.S. forces, and some discussions that have happened about what may have happened through the Vatican with that material. So an interesting connective point, right? Connective tissue there. So we'll go through a number of these documents. So the Twining Memorandum, very famous memorandum, General Nathan Twining, the head of Air Materiel Command, ultimately became Chief of Staff of the Air Force. So this memorandum says the UAP phenomenon is something real, not visionary or fictitious. It represents objects about the size of an aircraft that are circular in shape, metallic, and highly reflective, and they appear to be under intelligent control. This is official, obviously, memorandum. That's the assessment of Air Materiel Command in September 1947. Extremely explicit. Lack of physical evidence in the form of crashed materials. The memorandum was classified secret at the time, but not a top secret memo. So people kind of use that as a counter argument, but it is possibly explained by the classification level. All these documents are publicly available, and they've been declassified formally. So this is completely 100% vetted government information that's publicly available. Second FBI memorandum, this is in 49. So special agent in charge of the San Antonio field office is writing to J. Edgar Hoover directly, and they're talking about the protection of vital installations. This is the topic of the memo. So unidentified aerial phenomenon, otherwise known as flying discs, flying saucers, balls of fire, is considered top secret by both Army and Air Force. This is like a quote from the memo. The shape of the objects reported is round in a point of light with a definite area to the light source. Los Alamos is considered the target of these incursions. However, the incursions are occurring over numerous nuclear sites, including Oak Ridge, including Hanford. So they go through 9 scientific reasons that exist which indicate that the phenomena observed are not meteorites. In other words, there's no prosaic explanation. And obviously, it's a highly important matter, and the FBI is being requested to look into this. So we're going to have to go through some of these a little bit faster here. Sarbacher-Smith document. So Robert Sarbacher was a consultant of the Defense Research and Development Board. He had a correspondence with Wilbur Smith, a Canadian radio engineer. He basically asserted that there's a legacy program. Dr. Vannevar Bush, the head of the Defense Research and Development Board, was the head of the program. Oppenheimer was involved. This is the most highly classified matter in the United States government, rating even higher than the H-bomb, right? And that's been out there for quite a while. Intelligence reports about one of the first pilot encounters talking about the reality of the topic. This teletype, they were testing out new radar systems in Fort Monmouth in '51, picked up objects traveling 20,000 feet, going thousands of miles per hour, right? Some feats that were impossible at the time based on the technology. All right, let's just go into the second period here. Anonymous denunciations do not conform to the spirit of our time. Another interesting topic when you think about the sort of disinfo, discrediting campaigns that have been going on. 1952, the Belgian press is talking about UFOs over uranium mines, another very early connection with nuclear sites from foreign press, documented by CIA. The Chadwell memo, this one's extremely important, the 52 Chadwell memo. So Marshall Chadwell is the assistant director for scientific intelligence at the CIA. He's writing a memo that asserts, reports of incidents convince us there is something going on that must have immediate attention. Sightings of unexplained, objects at great altitudes traveling at high speeds in the vicinity of major U.S. defense installations are of such a nature that they are not attributable to natural phenomenon or known types of aerial vehicles. He was requesting like a national program to investigate this. Official CIA memo by the Deputy Assistant Director for Science and Technology. Maxwell Air Force Base emergency report, incursions over the nuclear tier in 1954. Jets were scrambled to take care of that. Intrusions over Minot, again, with nuclear missiles and UFOs. The famous Maelstrom incidents from '67, where another correlation with missiles and objects, and missiles being taken offline and missiles being brought online in the Soviet Union, documenting that. We're having to go fast here because they're telling me I don't have a lot of time. The Bollinger memo. So the Bollinger memo is interesting because Blue Book had been canceled. This is in '69. So Blue Book this is ending this Blue Book period, and so Bollinger and people are protesting. Like we're not going to have an official investigation of UFOs if Blue Book goes away. And the Bollinger memo basically says, like don't worry, like all the important reports didn't go to Blue Book anyway. Like they weren't really part of the Blue Book system anyway, so you don't have to worry about it. That's essentially the Bollinger memo, and we're going to continue to handle them with processes that already exist that like are not public. So that's the Bollinger memo. So the global strangeness, so like a little bit from Hadrian. I knew that good like bad becomes a routine, that temporary tends to endure, that what is external permeates to the inside, and that the mask, given time, comes to be the face itself. Right? So maybe a little insight into what's been happening here. The Australian Defence Minute Paper, this is really interesting. People can go onto the Australian National Archives and pull up this document, but it basically says, and maybe I'll quote it here, this is an official Australian assessment of the state of affairs of the UFO subject in the United States as of 1971. So it's like an official government report on an ally retrospective to 1971. Analyses of UFO reports by U.S. Air Force intelligence indicated that real phenomena were being reported, which had flight characteristics so far in advance of U.S. aircraft that only an extraterrestrial origin could be envisaged, quote unquote. A U.S. government agency studied UFO reports with the intention of determining the UFO propulsion methods, persuaded the U.S. Air Force to use Project Blue Book as a means to debunk them, and at a later stage to allocate funds for launching a crash program into anti-gravity power. Such an intensive onslaught on the gravity enigma can only be rationalized within the context of a firm belief that UFOs were real and that the intelligence behind them knew how to control gravity. So that's like an official Australian assessment of what's going on in the United States in 1971. Let's go maybe quicker through these. These are the incursions over the nuclear bases in the 70s, documented. The encounter over Tehran, an Iranian F-4 Phantom engaged UAP over Iran. Leslie Keene talks about this in her book. There's official DIA assessment of that. Had great interest. We'll skip this one in the interest of time, because that will be too long to talk about. The Halt Memorandum, Charles Halt, the Rendlesham Forest incident with the landing and the lights and the incursions. People are very familiar with that, 1981. So essentially, the reality, this is not just a domestic U.S. problem from a domestic U.S. audience perspective, but it's really an international problem. This final period, the Lake Erie UFO incident. The Ben Rich statements are interesting, right? So this memo, many of our man-made UFOs were unfunded opportunities, so very much intimating that he's been involved in some reverse engineering efforts at Skunk Works. Ben Rich being the successor to Kelly Johnson running the Lockheed Martin Skunk Works. So how are we doing? Okay, so we got to pick it up. All right, we got to end it. So let me the Wilson Davis notes, we talked about that, George Bush, videos, Disclosure Act, right? KARL's testimony. Like, everybody's familiar with these anyway, right? So you're not really missing anything there. So let me just go to sort of the conclusion. So this idea of this campaign plan that we're trying to happen, right? So this sort of public initiative, is maybe stalled with the stalling in the amendment, but you've got these other lines of effort, right, that Gary alluded to: the philosophical humanities investigation, the scientific research, private sector efforts, the medical area. We've talked about this idea of the Hilbert problems that would pertain to some of these areas, the indirect approach in purple. I would still argue that the quickest path to success is getting this sort of direct approach, government incentivization to happen, but that doesn't mean we can't do the purple stuff first. And then the final slide here is maybe like an alignment of the legislative agenda. The UAP Disclosure Act was going to be followed by a UAP Whistleblower Protection Act, which was going to be followed by a UAP Truth and Reconciliation Act. And several of these are already written. They're ready to go, right? And so, this program probably still needs to continue. And this idea of eminent domain that a lot of people are kind of concerned about is a phase in a bigger plan that goes into a consortia phase and into a regulated market phase. So there's quite a lot that is sort of went into this idea of this current area of disclosure. And so maybe I'll just end with that, and if we have a Q&A, we can maybe talk more about that. So apology for running a little bit long there.
There we go. KARL Nell talking about disclosure in the past and the present. If I may go to Daryl Zernick, since you're up, your thoughts?
I mean, it's all the stuff that we already know. I mean, who's the audience, I guess, is the question. Is it a bunch of people that are...
It's most of the people who already know what's going on in UFO disclosure. That's who the Soul Foundation goes to. Unfortunately, it's just a lot of information about historical context. Sometimes we have to look at our past. I used to say a lot of times to understand our future. And maybe that's what he's pointing at.
You would hope that we would, but unfortunately, it doesn't seem like humanity learns too much from its past.
Oh, yeah. They never do. They never do, my friend.
More and more interesting.
Yeah,
but the same components.
If we can, we do. Go ahead. I'm sorry.
Go ahead. No, that's it.
All right, we did get a video sent in, one at least, from one of our viewers who said they saw something. They've been seeing orbs flying over where they live on a regular basis. We've just got a little video clip here. I've promised I'd go ahead to the audience to go that. I would go ahead and bring this up. Let me go ahead and bring this clip up here. It's a relatively short one to go ahead and show you. There's some things out there in the sky that, as they're going ahead and watching it, there's something that's there in the sky. And after a period of time, it vanishes. So there you go. There's something that's out there that they're seeing. It's there for a period of time, and then it flutters and kind of goes out, which could point to potentially seeing something along the lines of a Chinese lantern or something like that. But it's just hard to tell from one single video of the event as it's been going on. So just wanted to go ahead and share that with everybody out there about what's happening in the skies. Yeah, interesting conversation today from KARL Nell, to say the absolute least. Let me get back into the studio, get this back up and going again. Yes, the solar storm has been increasing, friends. It's out there, it's going on, and it's going to be cranking up tonight. If you want to call it, the solar wind is kicking up to such a strength that we might get aurora borealis, clear skies like we have it here in Washington State right now, hitting in the mid latitudes. So it's just, as the magnetic field continues to weaken, we're getting more and more things like this popping up in our sky on a regular basis. And this was probably about an hour or so ago of what's going on, and it's just absolutely gorgeous of what's going on up in Starlap, up in if you want to call it, going on in Finland right now. Let me go ahead and find this one again. Bring up a little bit larger, bring it down. So yeah, they call this particular scenario that we're seeing right now a cinnamon roll, meaning you see the things in the sky and it just kind of goes and just wraps around itself. It's absolutely gorgeous. And hopefully we should be able to see some of these things in the United States tonight. Manuel, go ahead. put your hand up.
Yeah, I have a question for you. Wouldn't that affect the satellites in space, in orbit, the solar winds and all that?
When the solar wind kicks up, it's probably not enough to go ahead and affect satellites. Generally, satellites are initially affected coming from the initial X-ray burst that comes off the sun when a coronal mass ejection happens. And we'll also see it potentially when you have the CME, which is that material that's on the sun itself actually goes ahead and gets ejected off and interacts with our magnetic field. Usually during points when we're having, if you want to call it, enhanced auroral activity in the northern latitudes, we're not really seeing that many, if you want to call it, satellites being affected. Now, what satellites are affected are the ones that are going over the South Atlantic anomaly, which almost goes from the western coast of South Africa all the way across to Brazil and out into the Pacific at this point. This is a whole, if you want to call it, intermagnetic field. It's not stabilized. It's not getting smaller. It's getting larger and larger in an unpredictable, almost, method on a daily basis.
I know that Leon, he launched some of his satellite dishes, and some fell back onto Earth because they got hit.
Oh,
I don't know if you heard
was that
about
recently or was that in the past?
In the past.
Yeah, there was a past where they actually went up to put up some satellites, and as they were putting up some satellites, we hit a CME that came in from the sun, and when it happened, it actually prevented those satellites from achieving orbit, so they had to go ahead and literally abort the orbit and bring the satellites down.
Yeah, that's what happened.
Yeah. Yeah, just amazing stuff that's out there. And I just see this stuff. It's so bright, even the ground and everything, which basically is all basically green at this point, which means it's green from the aurora that's going on overhead. And a lot of times when this happens, you never see this kind of stuff. So that means it's clearly visible to the naked eye, not just to the cameras that are out there. If I could, let's see what else I've got going on here. And what's causing it right now, we have a coronal hole that's relatively huge. It's a large snaking coronal hole is directly facing Earth now. Effects are already being felt on Earth with our BT, which is the point where it says when it's negative, we're going to start seeing the aurora borealis, which it is. It's pretty enhanced. Mid-latitude aurora displays are possible tonight, especially strong during substorms, kind of like what we're seeing right now. That's a substorm going on. I go to a point where the substorm is kicked off. You can see it's kind of quiet, but then as the substorms start picking up again, we'll start seeing more details going off in the distance. See if we can get to another one here, where we start seeing more and more activity as it goes on. I guess we get these, if you want to call it, the aurora borealis going on every 11 years, which, based on my age, I'm going to be 58 this year. I've got like one solar cycle left, so enjoy it while you have it, folks. It's just really interesting, and it's just absolutely gorgeous about this stuff. I watch this stuff in my feed daily, and it's just, you look at it and it's nothing that we could go ahead. I guess we could create this with AI, but this is real, and it's just nice and I guess relaxing to go ahead and watch what's going on in the sky. Now, if I can, let me get to my bookmarks and see if there's anything we haven't covered here yet today. I know that we're waiting for someone potentially to show up, but don't think that's happening. All right. Not there. All right. News in Canada. On to the late night update approach. This just really blew my mind. Welcome to Woke Canada. Can't wait for Ontario to go ahead and break away from Canada itself. An Ontario resident who wanted both a vagina and penis wins public funding for a unique surgery. Yes, and a court in Ontario has ruled that Ontario must pay for a penis-sparing vaginoplasty for a person who identifies as neither fully male or female. Holy shit. Meanwhile, there's over 8,000 surgeries that are backlogged of people.
I guess we're getting actual dickheads at some point, too. That'll be interesting.
I know. I just saw this. Manuel, any thoughts on this one? You're from Canada? Silence.
Unbelievable.
Yeah, it is, and it's actually true, folks. Let's move on. All right, coming from Kotaku. All right, Kotaku. We heard what was going on with Discord earlier this week. Well, Discord is now shutting down its age verification. We're required you upload an ID, do images of your face to go ahead and pass that you are of a certain age. Discord distanced itself from age verification after firms' ties to planters. Peter Thiel. Surface. Wow, they're trying to get all this information about people. Gee, I wonder where they got that idea. Peter Thiel is one of the people behind all of this stuff. What else do we have going on? Well, apparently, we've got someone in the United Kingdom they're tired of reform not getting where they want to go, and now they have another party they actually want to bring forward. Let's play this little clip.
Restore Britain will not just stop mass immigration, we will reverse it. Far more people must leave Britain.
Okay. Potentially copyrighted music. Not a good idea. So Restore Britain. Andy, have you heard of Restore Britain yet?
Than arrive. If that means millions go.
Yes, I have. It's Rupert Lowe. He is a standing politician that was kicked out of Reform, who's now an independent. But he's actually setting up his own party. I heard about this yesterday.
Yeah. And basically saying if that means millions of people, go, then millions go. So he's really trying to stand up for the United Kingdom and get the unchecked, if you want to call it, immigration going on like we had here in the United States until we got a current president who literally shut the border down. Although the prior president, Joe Biden, said it couldn't be done without Congress. Apparently, it can be done. You know, I guess it's going to be hard to have yet another fractured party up there. Would it be better, do you think, for him to get along with reform, Andy?
Oh, that's a really hard one. I know they've got an awful lot of very deep differences. You know, the issue I have, it splits the right, you know, what they say as the right, you know, that you would have two parties, but technically they're now, I think, free, but follow this basic, the right of centre politics. So you got Reform, you've got this one.
But in the United States, you have the center, you've got the left, and you've got the right. But the problem is the left has moved so far to the left that the center is now the far right.
Yeah, and unfortunately, it seems to be going this way now. You know, with what's going on in our, you know, UK Parliament and what our Prime Minister seems to be going now. He's kicked out a load of his previous members of staff for one thing or another, and he seems to be, you know, whether he's lurching to the left more than he previously did. It's very complicated and gives me a headache, to be honest.
No, it's one hell of a headache. That's one thing we've been dealing with a lot here on Disclosure tonight, if I can find the right one to get to. But you know what? When you have Susan Goff around to go ahead and guide you for what's happening, you never know who may pop up in the show.
Oh, my God. Are you kidding me? For Valentine's Day, we have to look at Susan Goff, the erection killer for a romantic holiday.
Oh, there we go. If she's not looking into my face, she's looking from the bottom of the scene. Good to hear from you, Mike. Where you been? Well, it says you're the Disclosure bouncer now. What the hell happened?
Yeah, well, I'm just making sure that the trolls stay the hell out of here and don't come in like they like to do from time to time. So I'm around. You know that.
You're on hiatus. You've been a bad boy.
Yeah, but I keep an eye on things, and I'm not that far away.
Yeah. Well, it's nice of you to stop in. I know a lot of people in the audience miss you on a regular basis, and that's why we say you're on a hiatus, not necessarily off the show, because that's what it is.
It is, and I miss everybody as well. And I also wanted to take this opportunity to say Happy Valentine's Day to everybody from the show. And yeah, it's been very quiet. And you've been covering this on the show, so you and I are both well aware nothing is really happening on the disclosure front right now. There's too much going on elsewhere at the moment. So,
Yeah.
Until it picks up, it's just this is how it's going to be at the moment.
Oh, I know. I appreciate you stopping in, saying hi to the audience. A lot of people have been asking about you every single show. Yes, he is our bouncer at the front door to keep the trolls out. He's been taken off the stage for the time being, but it's a hiatus. I'll just make that clear. And I can't wait, Mike. You know this clip is going to be showing up on X not too long.
No, we know that, but that's okay.
Yeah, fuck them.
We'll be with it. That's
Yeah.
right.
All
It'll
right.
be fun.
Oh, absolutely. If we can, let's get into our next piece here. If we're getting into it, British comedian Pat Smith brilliantly points out the hypocrisy surrounding the subject of mass immigration in the United Kingdom. And he says it in a ways a lot of Brits would actually say it. And just take a listen to this one, folks.
Okay, I think we can all agree everything here is a little bit too Chinese. All the restaurants and cafes and that, for a start, way too many noodles. I don't eat noodles. You know, we're going to need pie and mash, ham, egg and chips. I mean, you need to cater to me, yeah? No? I don't think you understand. I'm not from here, okay? I left the UK because I didn't like it, all right? So I need you to change everything to make it feel like it's the UK, yeah? Still no, is it? Right, okay. Well, also, I can't really work at the minute. Anxiety. Yeah, so when do I get my money? Obviously, got a few kids at home and all, so they're going to need to come here. That's a no-brainer. Why do you keep saying no? I've noticed as well, there's a lot of Chinese people here as well, isn't it? So I was thinking we could get loads of me over here and we have our own little area and then you lot can just fuck off. Does that sound good? It doesn't. Well, no, hear me out, because I was thinking if we get loads of me over here, then we can vote in, you know, one of me to be in charge, and then we can all start telling you lot how to live. And after that, I was going to organise some marches where we go through the streets chanting anti-Chinese sentiments. So obviously you'll need to protect us while we do that. That's a no as well, is it? Oh. And finally, I am here illegally. Yeah, didn't respect the rules on that one. So do I just choose any hotel, or have you got certain prison?
Yeah, there you go. But I think that really kind of pegs in on what's going on in the UK. We have a lot of friends from the UK who would love to say things, but if they do, they can end up having the police knocking on their door at 4:30 in the morning to haul them away to jail for saying things that has gone against, and call, you know, they would actually probably call this Islamophobic, unfortunately. But it's great to see people that are out there and saying it themselves. Well, you know, we look back in history of different things that are going on. This is actually one of the, if you want to call it, we had Operation Bluegill Prime, where we're putting nukes up into the atmosphere. Did you know that one of those rockets blew apart on the island itself and never launched and caused a nuclear blow up right on Johnson Island? Let's watch this one. It's absolutely amazing. Boom. Boom. Let's go for the big one. And here we go. Kabam. The nuclear explosion takes place. Boom. And here's what's left. The buildings actually survived, but the entire island, the entire atoll was basically made uninhabitable, and they had to go ahead and potentially clean these things up. If there's anything else going on? No, let's get past this. The DMV. All right, this is a good one. We talk about voter ID. Majority, every single person in the United States wants voter ID. This is a little interesting clip from CNN to go ahead and drive home that point. It's not what you think it is if you're on the left side of things, folks. Take a listen.
For people who don't have access to those things, to be able to get to the DMV, to be able to get to places where you can get a passport.
Our government expects a lot of us. Every single year, every single person is expected to file their taxes, something that is very complicated.
You can do it online.
You have to outsource. During COVID,
but you can do it online.
People had to go and get a vaccine in person. I went twice. I had to carry my little.
What does that have to do with voting?
I had to carry my little card around.
No, we're way off track on this. No,
we're not. The government expects a lot of things of people for taxes.
Can I just explain to you the difference? Can I tell you the difference?
Why can't we expect?
Can I tell you the difference?
Why can't we
Can I just
expect
explain to you the fundamental
something far
difference?
less onerous?
Yeah, please. Would you correct her?
For people.
What we're talking about here, Mike, is when COVID happened, you had to have a little vaccine card that you had to walk around and present to everybody to be able to get into places in New York, right?
I remember that. Yeah, they really forced everybody to go back to a normal life, to jump through the hoops they wanted everyone to do.
Yeah.
It was, really terrible.
And as soon as they bring that up, the dialogue from the Dems falls apart. Did you hear how they all frickin' just started frickin' going off like harpies?
I went
oh my God.
twice.
Yeah, it was bad.
I had to carry my little card around.
No, we're way off track on this. No, we're not.
The government expects.
We're way off track. They're not off track. They're on target.
No, it's dead on target. And
Yeah.
it sounds like feeding time at the zoo with them.
Oh, sounds like feeding time at the chicken farm.
Yep.
All right. Meanwhile, in Enumclaw, Washington, which is close to home, closer than most people out there, loudmouth Liliana swings at a pro-ICE supporter, lands a punch.
You're not a kid.
And then she's about to fuck around and find out.
You're going to jail. You're going to jail. You're going to jail.
Oh my God, the harpies are going off. Okay, I'm not sure if that's copywritten, but I just have to be careful.
Yep.
Bum bum. And they're hauling her aft to the police station, but it's not just there. It's about to get ratcheted up from here. You know, anytime you touch a police officer, Mike, you know, it's a felony,
Yes,
right?
sir.
It's assault.
Yes, sir. It is assault and battery.
Yeah.
Assaulting a police officer. Yep.
Yeah, we got to start covering some police videos on here soon, too. A lot of interesting things where people don't realize what's truly going off. All right, we got those people out of there. That one's gone. Now watch the one. We got the one with the red hat and the light-colored hoodie. Let's see if they're going after her next. And we've got a guy here with red hair, of course. Oh, is that the same one? Maybe. Why do they feel like they can do these things and not be subject to the law? It just doesn't make sense.
They're above the law.
Yeah.
So they think they are.
And in some cases, they're told they are above the law.
Or they think they're exempt from the consequences, Daryl.
Yeah, they're trained to go de-arrest people.
Yeah. Now, we do have a longer clip from Rupert Lowe MP. I think it's not going to be including any licensed music, so I think we can play this one. This is like reform on steroids, I believe the way as Andy would put it. Let's go ahead and listen to what we have to go on here. They want their country back.
I have chosen to speak to you today from the farm because places like this represent what proper Britain is about. Hard work, responsibility, effort, duty, stewardship. This is the England I know, and this is the England that I love. On a farm, you don't think in election cycles or headlines or polling. You think in seasons. You think in generations, in what you leave behind to those who come after you. And that's why, here on the farm, I am now launching Restore Britain as a national political party. I'm now going to dedicate my life to finding, organising, funding, and providing hundreds of qualified candidates to present to the British people at the next general election. This process has already started, with invitations being issued to patriots in aligned political parties, Reform, the Conservatives, the SDP, Advance, and more. In local politics, we will work in partnership with localised political parties, such as Great Yarmouth First, that have the best interests of their residents at heart, combining our forces at the next general election. The men and women standing for Restore in that election will not be politicians. I promise you that. They will not be failed ministers. They will not be tainted by failures of the past. They will be from business, from the military, from science, from medicine, from education, from industry, representing real communities up and down the country. Every single one will be from well outside the existing political establishment, and every single one will understand the difficult decisions that need to be taken. Because there are no easy fixes. I'm not going to tell you comforting lies about the condition of our country. I have only ever been honest with the British people, and I will be straight with you now. What is necessary will be incredibly painful. But for the first time in a very long time, voters will have a genuine alternative which is truthful with them about the scale of what now has to be done. The first priority is to control who comes to our country, and more importantly, who stays in our country. Restore Britain will not just stop mass immigration, we will reverse it. Every single illegal migrant will be securely detained and then deported. The message will be unrelenting. If you are in this country without our permission, you will be removed. For the foreseeable future, far more people must leave Britain than arrive. If a foreign national is unable to speak English, lives in social housing, claims benefits, refuses to work, fails to integrate, commits crime, or even actively hates our way of life and wishes to do us harm, then they must leave or be made to leave. Restore Britain will make our communities safe again for women and children. That I promise you. If that means millions go, then millions go. We're constantly told that the economy needs vast swathes of low-skilled migrants. We know that's simply not true. What we need is to get millions of healthy Brits back into work. A radical overhaul of how welfare is delivered. Protecting those in genuine need, but not funding healthy shirkers to live off the back of hard-working men and women. If you can work, you must work. It really is that simple. Restore Britain will be abundantly clear. If you consistently refuse work, then you will lose your benefits. We will punish indolence, and more importantly, we will reward success. We will provide vast economic incentives for men and women to start businesses, generate opportunities, build wealth, and create self-sufficient families. Standing here today on the farm, I know exactly what it means to deal with energy bills, labor shortages, regulation, unproductive paperwork, planning restrictions, tax, and endless uncertainty. The state has definitively become the enemy of the people. Restore Britain will burn away suffocating taxes on work and enterprise. We will slash unnecessary regulation. We will dismantle bloated quangos and the overbearing HR culture. We must crush parasitic Britain.
Firefly.
We will restore long-term, stable, logical policy so that businesses can plan and invest and grow again. But Restore Britain is about much more than numbers on a spreadsheet. It's about who we are as a nation and who we are as a people. Britain is not just an economy. Britain is not just an idea. Britain is not just a passport. Britain is a nation. Britain is a people, our people. And Restore Britain will never allow that to be erased. We will celebrate our Christian heritage and the identity that built and shaped this country. Responsibility, restraint, forgiveness, duty, and fairness. In short, a high-trust society. That will mean defending our culture. That will mean resisting the relentless creep of radical Islam. That will mean banning the burqa, outlawing Sharia law, blocking cousin marriages, and reimposing our Christian-based rule of law. A Restore Britain government would legislate to ensure that no halal or kosher slaughter on British soil. This is Britain, and we will do things our way. This political party now exists for one reason: to restore Britain, to make it a better, safer, and more prosperous place for British men and women to raise their families. It will be difficult, and it will be painful. But I assure you, it is possible. I hope you will consider joining me on this journey and becoming a member of our party. It is our country. It is now our collective responsibility to act. Together, we will restore Britain. Thank you.
Well, I have to say, Daryl, Mike, anybody, this is the same battle we're fighting in the United States right now with what happened during the Biden administration, where they had the equivalent of I believe, what was it? The state of the city of Pittsburgh, Pennsylvania, coming almost on a daily basis. Where do you take all the different people and put them? How do you deal with it? You deal with another, if you want to call it, wasn't from one country, it was from all of them. And they don't want to integrate with our governments. They don't want to integrate with our lifestyle. They don't want to integrate with the way that things are in this country. But this is conceived as heresy in the United States versus where we can see it happening in, if you want to call it, United Kingdom, where they just had a local community where they brought in 600 new residents, all male, of warfighting age or working age. They give them food. They give them shelter. They give them a phone. They give them money every week to spend. But you know what they don't give them? Any outlet for any of their sexual desires that they may have based on where they came from, whether that's their religious thinkings or thoughts or what they've been taught, where if you have a little girl who is not Muslim, you can do to them because they're haram. And if that's what's really going on, these politicians are knowingly putting these populations into these areas where the existing citizenship is going to be freaking preyed upon by this society. It's not like they're bringing them in, giving them classes, make sure they have to go through mandatory training and assimilation into the UK government before they let it free in everybody. No, they just plop them down, give them the stuff they need, and fucking walk away.
Yeah, crazy situation. Go ahead, Mike.
I have a question, Thomas. Are they allowing these immigrants to vote in the elections in Britain?
No, where was that at? That was in France. They're working to go ahead and pass something where an individual who does not live where they, for wherever they live, if they're not a citizen, they can vote in local as well as, local elections for like councilmen and stuff and mayors and stuff. And even the people who who are running for those roles don't have to be citizens as well.
That's great. I'm going to go to Paris and cast my vote for somebody else.
Well, you might be able to.
Yeah, I think that'd be a great like Nick Shirley kind of video. We're going to Paris today to go vote in the French election.
I mean, it comes down to you go someplace. It's like I know so many Vietnamese and Cambodians who came across after the Vietnam War, where their country was destroyed either by the CIA, like in Cambodia, which basically destabilized the government, allowed Pol Pot to come in and just fucking genocide the whole freaking population, to what was going on in Vietnam. We welcomed all these people in, and you know what? They love America. They love football. They love baseball. They love their jobs. They love this country. They fly the American flag. They're proud to be Americans. But the thing is, we're not seeing that in big swaths of those who have emigrated to this country. They say, not my president, not my country, not something else. And they've got like Mexican flags hanging from there. Is wonderful. Why are you here if you're not here to support the government that you so want to be a part of? It just doesn't make sense.
No, you're spot on.
And I'm not trying to be racist or anti-immigrant or anything. My great-great-grandparents, I had the Demels. I believe they came from Denmark. There's a chocolatier company over there related to. My grandmother, she came from Poland. She was over in Poland during World War I. She was in a valley where you would have the Russians, the Germans would come in and take over the place, and they'd have to move out of the house into the farm. And then they would get pushed back. The Russians would come in, and they get pushed out back to the farm, except the Russians starved the people who lived there. And they would take the girls and take them by the hair and slam them up against the wall. Now, my grandmother didn't tell me what happened next, but you can kind of put the dots together. My great aunt became a nun because of that, because of what she went through during World War I. It was freaking horrible. So there's just a lot of shit that goes on in a lot of countries and a lot of different places. Sorry, I got down into that, but it's just...
Well, before you get off of it, I have to believe, I'm pretty sure in making this statement, the people that hate illegal immigration the most are legal immigrants to the United States. And what's really funny is you never see any mainstream media going and asking legal immigrants, how do you feel about illegal immigration? Because they already know the answer.
You know what? I'm going to do that. I'll get together with my family and get them on film.
There you go.
And get them to go ahead and talk about how they feel about it. But we need to hear this from different places because, and you look at, I guess this all kind of ties back to voter ID right now that's coming our way. And the Dems in frickin' Washington are absolutely against it because their asses are on the line. But you know what? Like we just saw in that video clip a little bit ago, coming out of that, when there was COVID, all the Dems supported IDs for your COVID vaccines and the enforcement that you had to go ahead and show those IDs wherever you went. So what's the difference?
You have to show your ID to buy alcohol, to buy cigarettes.
To get on a plane, to leave the country, come back in the country?
I mean, if you want to tell me all the poor people in America don't have IDs, how are they buying cigarettes and alcohol?
Yeah, absolutely. Brian?
Yeah, just real quick, I really feel sorry for the UK. That was a great video. And for us in the United States, we're shutting down the border. Anybody that wants to whine about that, 1/3 of women and girls, and when I say girls, I mean, you're talking, imagine for those of you at home, your 6-year-old, your 7-year-old daughters get raped when they come up here. 1/3. They all are given abortion pills. That was from across our own southern border. I have personally seen the rape trees. They're little Palo Verde bushes, and the girls stand under them, and as the migrant men come across, they get their fill and they move on. So if anything to stop immigration...
Are those prostitutes with pimps probably?
No, these are, they...
Probably.
The girls come across with a coyote. The coyote claims that they are their dad.
Right. And they owe them money for bringing them across. So they have to do something to pay that off. That's prostitution. That's trafficking.
And I don't mean to get you a strike with the young thing, Thomas, here, but
it's okay.
It's absolutely sick. And I know it's happening in the UK, and it should never happen again. And if any man worth their salt needs to stand up to this stuff and stop voting for these idiots that encourage this stuff. If only for that. I know this is a UFO channel, but this stuff drives me nuts. I have
all right.
Personally, I know exactly where it is. It's
20
miles south of me.
I have to say, Brian, you caught me because I've been transitioning the show when different things are going on, where it's at. Let me find it here. To Late Night Update with Disclosure Tonight. Meaning we're talking about things that are happening around the world in an independent journalist kind of, position on it for us to go ahead and cover what's going on and just get us, I hate to say it, get us out of the world of just UFOs because there's not a lot of things going on, but our audience has a lot of stuff they're interested in and we want to go ahead and cover and bring our great coverage like we have before when we had the things going on with the drones in the past.
Well, I like it, Thomas,
and the shootdowns we had in over Dead Horse, Alaska, United States, over Maelstrom. They tried to shoot it down, and then over Lake Huron, and in the Yukon.
Well, your audience had to hear my rant, and there it is.
Thank you, sir.
All that stuff's important. Especially the shoot down.
Yeah.
And so, look, we're all involved in the society together. and we need to make it a better one.
And we have interest in things like weather. Like, I saw this today and it blew my mind. You know how they talk about there's an atmospheric trough that goes on? That's something where all the different moisture is delivered through. This is the first time I've actually seen that modeled in 3D and rotated around. I just saw this and said, holy shit, I need to find more of this because this is just amazing, you know, and that's an example of the kind of stuff we deal with weather. Bringing an open eye to that. We've been talking about things that are going on with the sun because I really think, Brian, what's going on with the sun is really tied to the non-human intelligence and what they're doing here on the planet, why they're stepping it up. They know what's going to happen when. They're trying to get us to a certain point to try and preserve some of that to get us through this next kablooey.
Yeah, and you really turned me and a lot of the audience onto that, and I find it absolutely fascinating, and I think that's obviously happened around the Younger Dryas area too, and that they tried to continue.
Well, that's the one. That's the one that was 12,000 years ago. Yeah. But 6,000 years after the Younger Dryas, there was an excursion. Didn't go completely, but it went certain far. And every time that happens, it destabilizes our climate, and you see mass populations moving out of areas. What do you think? It was everything was all abandoned in the Mayan culture when they took it over.
Yeah,
there was already something there.
And imagine how many cultures may be underwater as well.
Oh, gosh, yes.
That we have not found.
Yeah. Absolutely. Let's see who we've got. Well, great conversation. Talking about stuff where we're at, where we're going towards. Again, we're going to keep the conversation going. We have a great community of people that we want to continue to go ahead and have an audience with. Maybe we'll grow and find some different ways to get to it. But based on where I'm seeing what's going on, UFO stuff, luckily we did have the video from Saul to go ahead and play today. The only news that was new was the story coming that we talked about up front about the NASA JPL changing data. We'll still cover that as our top topics, but it's where just sometimes you have to change with the times, otherwise you'll become extinct. Don't want to be a dinosaur. On that note, well, what a great afternoon, everybody. Happy Saturday, happy Valentine's Day. Let me get this out of here. Does it work? I think so. Come on, you can get up here somewhere. There it is. I want to thank everybody for coming out to this episode of Disclosure tonight. It's been a hoot and a half, to say the absolute least. I appreciate everyone coming out and enjoying the conversation. Happy Saturday, happy Valentine's Day. Yes, we try to have a great show for everybody. Most of all, I want to go ahead and thank our Soul Super Chatter tonight that we got. Actually, two. One from Anonymous Rex. Thank you very much, Tim. Appreciate it. Thank you, Disclosure tonight. Thank you for supporting us and what we do here. Yeah, we're going to keep on covering what's going on with the sun because we're coming out of the solar cycle and things seem to be ramping up, which is amazing to say the least. I also want to thank Laura Campbell for the other super chat. Thank you very much, my dear lady. And thank you for being such a participant in tonight's show. We appreciate your contributions to this channel more than you believe.
You're welcome, Thomas. I'm glad you're around to talk about these things and try to educate others.
Yeah, absolutely. Thank you very much, Laura. And as we usually say at the end of every episode of Disclosure tonight, eyes open, no fear, be safe, everybody. But what, Mike? Thank you for coming in tonight.
Oh, my pleasure. You're quite welcome. It was a good show tonight.
Yeah.
For Valentine's Day for everybody. Yeah, I enjoyed it.
Absolutely.
As I usually do. So
oh, absolutely.
Keep up the good work, my friend.
Thank you, everybody. And we'll go ahead and you have a good one. We'll catch you on the flip side.
Go back to Party City where you belong.
See you soon, everybody. Bye-bye.